So, hello everyone, and welcome to the tarot for the month of April 2025. This is our first tarot reading of the spring. And as always, we have some really interesting card insights to share this month. So, hope you're ready. I started with the fact that although I have seriously wanted the fraud, the waste, and the corruption in Washington, D.C. to end, my heart goes out to the people who have been suddenly let go from their jobs. So that whole thing figured into my first question. I then asked a question about dealing with the political chaos and the financial struggles going on all around us and our future, and the best way to handle all of that. Then all the talk going around about war became the basis of my third question, and I asked that question of the animal kingdom. I didn't just ask for advice from the animal kingdom. I actually asked them a question. And finally, I got a new tarot deck for my birthday, and it's called the Herbal Astrology Oracle. So I drew a card from the plant world, and I got a very interesting card. So let's begin. So the questions are, number one, what is the future of jobs to sustain or rebuild our economy? And what is the best way to think about future jobs as people end up losing a job due to cutbacks, or if they're graduating from college and hoping to step out into a good, solid position? So that's question number one. Question number two was, given the political struggles that are going on everywhere and the threats of financial collapse across the entire Western world, as well as the constant uncertainties of the future, what is the best way to maintain a bit of serenity as we move forward with our daily lives? So, question number three, with all the talk of war with Iran or with China, what advice can we get from the animal kingdom about avoiding war and bringing people together more peaceably? Number four, what advice does the plant kingdom have for us in the month of April? And the cards drawn were, in response to question number one, the Four of Swords. The card drawn for question number two, the Five of Swords. The question drawn for, or the card drawn for question number six was the Snake. Number 6 in the animal medicine card deck. And the last card drawn was from the Herbal Astrology Oracle, number 6 again, Sage. So let's go through these and see how they fit or answer our questions. Number one, what is the future of jobs to sustain or rebuild our economy? And what's the best way to think about future jobs as people end up losing a job due to cutbacks, or if they're graduating from college and hoping to step into a good, solid position? So when I asked this question, I was of the opinion that jobs and what they make possible in our lives was of major importance. But the card drawn here was the Four of Swords, a minor arcana card with 4 main meanings. And those meanings are pretty tough. The meanings are fossilized, stoned, deep sleep, and meditation. Wow. We saw this card last August, in response to a question about our government. And now here it is again in response to a question about a major aspect of the current system that's kind of being torn up by our government, the jobs that support our way of life. So when you look at this card, you see a man lying flat on his back on something that looks like a casket. It could be a platform or a table, but it's not clear. And the book calls it a sarcophagus. There's a single sword hanging horizontally on the side of the casket. And the man, the sword, and the casket are all a dirty yellow color. There is a beautiful stained glass window in the upper left corner with the word P-A-X, Latin. It's a Latin word, pax, means peace, over the head of one of the figures in that window. And 3 gray swords hang vertically on the wall in the upper right corner, and the walls of the room are gray. So the message of this card, it offers a really hard punch that says the idea of jobs is a fossil. And those who plan on getting jobs, those who have lost a job, as well as those thinking about jobs in the future, should tap their mental potential and activate unused mental resources. Now, that's a pretty direct order that says we need a new way of thinking about jobs. As you look at the card, it's difficult to tell whether the figure lying on the casket is alive or dead, asleep or awake, or maybe perhaps in meditation. But the pillow under his head suggests a need for something to soften the hard reality of where the head is at. That dirty yellow color is a particularly strong indication of a lack of clarity, especially given the fact that the swords are the symbol of consciousness and intellectual ability. Are we seeing jobs clearly for what they represent? What do they represent? I asked that to somebody and they said, oh, it's wage slaves. It's like, no, that's not the answer I was looking for. But what would you do all day if you didn't have a job? How would you survive? What would be your plan? The casket in this card, on this card, represents the end of something, a shock, trauma, and a world turned upside down, as well as the harshness of human experience. If we were to say the figure is lying on a platform or a table, platforms represent part of the worldviews we hold and the agendas we maintain as citizens. That's our platform. Certainly, those who have suddenly lost jobs will feel that their world has been turned upside down. Those trying to get started at building a life for themselves will come face to face with the harshness of a world in the throes of massive changes, a world that really doesn't care how many years you spent jumping through the college hoops or what you owe in student loans. The stained glass window represents the need as well as the ability to put pieces together to form a brightly colored future for the self, one that offers success and pax, like I said, the Latin word for peace of mind, mental achievement, and contentment. Stained glass also represents the need to recognize new patterns taking shape all around you, as well as the importance of small details. Windows symbolize opportunity and seeing the landscape outside the self. Life is a puzzle, and we must recognize the opportunities and work through the challenges those opportunities bring to us. Swords are the suit of intellectual and mental ability, and the swords hanging on the wall indicate that intellectual gifts and perspectives that are not in use or are hung up for one reason or another. You know, everybody's got a few hang-ups, but hopefully not enough to get in the way of moving forward with their entire life and work and survival. Those swords are gray swords on a gray wall, symbolizing parts of the self that we are unconscious of or pay no attention to. The sword's message is to compose yourself by detaching from the drama long enough to develop a balanced and unprejudiced view of the situation, and then begin to reorganize life and formulate a plan that takes into account real life. In fact, one of the warnings of this card is that you are being pushed to become more aware of the dangers of having gotten away from the true reality of what is. Truth is what is. The Four of Swords demands that we become more active in the real world and let go of illusions and delusions. This is the card of feeling frozen, unable to move in any direction because of an inability to digest what's being observed or experienced. The advice is to allow yourself some time and space to find peace and quiet in order to access the deeper side of the self. This will allow one to master and handle even major upsets and contradictions. This card tells us to calm down, let go of envy, jealousy, resentment, and especially fear, and get focused because we are on a new journey of the spirit, one in which jobs and the world they represent may be already fossils left from an old way of life. The Four of Swords is known as the Lord of Truths, who urges us to start something new. The number 4 represents a growing sense of stability. And key words for this card are convalescence, retreat, time out, seclusion, contemplation, manifestation, affliction, legal matters, separation, analysis, decision-making, expansion, put into action, refuge from mental chaos, and change from the better, change for the better. So perhaps we are moving to a world in which debt is not the basis of our financial lives, and we are no longer tied to jobs needed for survival. Maybe think about that. Question number 2. Given the political struggles going on everywhere and the threats of financial collapse across the entire Western world and the constant uncertainties of the future, what's the best way to organize and move forward with our daily lives? And the card drawn here was the 5 of Swords, with the 4 being the card for the first one. We've got a little bit of a progression here. So when you look at this card, you see 3 different figures. A very large figure in the foreground, a smaller one who's walking away, and a tiny figure facing the water in the background who's holding his head as if in sorrow or grief. These 3 figures represent the process of learning from personal experience and walking away from dishonest, ruthless, or unjust individuals or principles. That tiny figure with his back to us symbolizes swimming in emotions that he cannot seem to manage or understand. Holding on to his head represents stubbornly holding on to views and perspectives that are immature or not realistic. Are we learning anything from what we have observed regarding politics and the threats of financial ruin? We would do well to learn from this experience and allow the self to change naturally and continuously, which is how we're meant to unfold so as to avoid massive or shocking stresses or situations that put our life at risk. When you fight change and fight and fight and fight, and all of a sudden you can't hold it back anymore, it's too much to deal with. Little change, constant, continuous little change. The medium-sized figure walking away is leaving 2 swords on the ground behind him. He wears a yellow tunic tinged with reddish brown, indicating a lack of intellectual maturity or an intellect that is ineffective due to bias, prejudice, or emotional blocks. However, those 2 swords on the ground indicate that he has abandoned intellectual positions and viewpoints that no longer serve him. Since our question is about political struggles and financial threats, this figure warns us that we may have to walk away from ideas, positions, and views full of biases and prejudice simply because they no longer serve our current needs or fit our current situation. In the distance, beyond both the medium-sized and the tiny figures, there are several islands across the water, and they represent islands of awareness in a sea of ignorance. The warning here is that it is only the mature intellect that begins to maintain presence of mind, pay attention to what's happening in real time, and respond wisely in ways that demonstrate caring and a willingness to do what you can and use what you have instead of whining that there's nothing you can do because you're only one person. No. Do what you can. In the foreground of the card stands a full-size figure wearing a red shirt, a green tunic, red leggings, and brown boots. That red shirt and leggings represent newfound passions, desires, and the will to direct one's life in new ways, something that may be critical in the coming weeks and months. The green tunic says there may be some inexperience in handling things, but the willingness to learn and grow is now primary. This is a good sign because it says we are ready to move on, learning as we go, even though we are dealing with new and unfamiliar conditions. It's kind of like learning by the seat of your pants. The brown boots represent heavy work having already been done, with perhaps more work still needed. The figure has short, spiky, reddish hair, indicating that the thoughts are not very well developed. They're kind of short, new to the world, but they are powerful and full of passion that pokes around in every direction, examining everything in order to get a fresh perspective. That large figure is holding 3 swords, 2 pointing up and 1 pointing down, or looks like it's resting on the ground, and you can't see the tip of it. The 2 swords pointing up represent a focus on higher consciousness and a willingness to allow intuition to be infused into one's thinking. The sword resting on the ground recognizes or symbolizes a recognition of the need to know and understand nature and the natural forces that move through one's reality. Together, the 3 swords represent a willingness to work with what you know and respond to reality in ways that make sense. They are an acknowledgement that reality is the great teacher, and to ignore it is to put one's entire life at risk. The figure is looking backwards in the direction of the two smaller figures, as if like keeping his former immature and unproductive approach to life in mind in order to avoid repeating earlier mistakes. And that blue sky with the ragged clouds scattered across it symbolizes the dawning of clarity. That's the blue sky. And the breaking up of cloudy thinking, something that will be a key to moving forward in life in a reality where everything is shifting and tilting on a daily basis. The Five of Swords is a highly masculine card of disruption, crisis, and challenge that can only be met by learning from experience and acting in accord with what you have learned. This card is ruled by Saturn, the father of time, and its message is that times have changed and we must change with it. It is known as the Lord of Defeat, and it warns that the greatest enemy of the intellect is sentimentalism, which would be longing for the good old days, being sentimental about those good old days. So the advice of this card is to put oneself first, learn, and then use your wisdom to help yourself and others move forward. The number 5 itself symbolizes a pivotal turning point if, and only if, one is willing to stand up and confront the situation. 5 is the symbol of the mice who must put a bell on the cat and must summon great courage in order to do so, and planning and strategy and everything. So keywords for the 5 of Swords are disruption, loss, taking possession of the field, disdain, dishonor, instability, a break in routine, sudden insight, confronting treachery, humiliation, setback, and inner growth. So, question number 3. With all the talk of a war with Iran or China, what advice can we get from the animal kingdom about avoiding war and bringing people together more peaceably? And the card drawn here was from the Animal Medicine deck. And to my surprise, it was number 6, the snake. Wow. Of all the creatures found in nature, this one holds the incredibly powerful symbolism of death, rebirth, resurrection, initiation, transmutation, and wisdom. Whoa. The snake has been of utmost significance in numerous cultures, both ancient and current. Thanks to religion, it's also been the subject of great controversy and paradox. Why? Because of the story of Genesis, in which Eve was told by a snake to eat the apple that would open her eyes to wisdom and power, the power of the Godhead. According to the story, she did so. Then she talked Adam into sharing the apple, and the rest is a history of blame, shame, and guilt over knowing what we are told we should not have known. So what is the real significance of the snake? It is that the civilization before us had advanced science and a more expansive level of consciousness. They knew that everything in the universe was vibration and waves. And when they looked at the snake and the way it moved, they recognized the same kind of wave motion. So with the recognition that everything was wave energy, the snake became a symbol of the essence of all form on earth. When the snake shed its skin, this became symbolic of the expansion of consciousness and the emergence of a more powerful human. So going back to our question, which is about war, Snake has a variety of messages, warnings, and advice. Those who know and hold snake medicine are rare people. Typically, they have been poisoned mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally in repeated ways. Let me say that again. Those who know and hold snake medicine are rare people because they have been poisoned mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally in repeated ways. However, through suffering and great effort, they have managed to heal themselves through transmutation. Transmutation is the ability to embrace the experience at hand, to feel it fully, and let it move you into a process of shifting your frequency matrix just enough to leave behind the poisonous effects. This can also move one into a more expansive consciousness, in which the lesson is all things are equal in creation, and those things that might be experienced as poison can be eaten, ingested, integrated, and transmuted if one has the proper state of mind. All things in creation are equal. And things that might be experienced as poison can be eaten, ingested, integrated, and transmuted if you have the proper state of mind. So, if we look at the ways we have been poisoned mentally, we could say we've been fed lies about many things, including lies about the situations in and intentions of Iran, China, our government, other governments, our banks, our schools, our medical journals, our scientific research, and many other aspects of life. One result of swallowing those lies is weak thinking. Another is confusion when trying to make our intuitive knowings match what we've been told or what we witness in the real world. Of course, another point of confusion might be the willingness to go to war to fight battles for an elite overlord when the only thing in it for you is death. How do we transmute this kind of poisoning and bring about a rebirth for all concerned? Mind communication and truth be critically important here. So let's say that we've been poisoned physically. And in my humble opinion, we have been poisoned in this way through many different channels. Some of those poisons come through the water we drink, some through the food sprayed with poisonous chemicals and serious heavy metals. It comes through the medicines that we have available or are forced to take. It comes through being sprayed with chemtrails and through electromagnetic frequencies that interfere with cell metabolism. To transmute all of this, do we have to adopt simpler lifestyles? Or do we need to create smarter lifestyles that at least counter these kinds of poisons until we can re-engineer and rebuild our world? Snake is about rebirth. What about the spiritual poisoning that we have endured? Wow, spiritual poisoning is any teaching that leads you away from coming to know the true spirit of yourself and your potential. It is any preaching that insists you follow their dogma and belief system instead of yours. It is any movement that demands condemnation or even annihilation of others because they have a different belief system or lifestyle. Spiritual poisoning is often insidious, and it entices people to spend an entire lifetime worrying about things that are not real, thus preventing the evolution of consciousness as well as preventing true joy from popping up and being experienced. Then there's emotional poisoning, something that has been widespread over the past decades in the form of ignorance of what constitutes good parenting, lack of access to Mother Nature, resulting in poor and lopsided education, the proliferation of destructive media that emphasizes a preoccupation with psychological and emotional issues, gender issues, and a false narrative based on illusions. The pathway to healing, spiritual and emotional poisoning, requires great courage on the part of each individual, because there's usually very little support while walking that path. However, the result of that path, when you walk it, is a piercing clarity and an unshakable knowing that anchors the individual and results in an array of ethical approaches that inspire and encourage others. So going back to our question, which is about avoiding war and bringing people together in order to move forward in peace, what Snake is pointing out is the need to look at all the ways we have been poisoned and then heal ourselves if we want to come together and avoid war. What Snake tells us is that the war begins inside the individual. To avoid this war, we must stop fighting with the true self. That true self has been poisoned. This means we must be honest. We must be real. Avoiding war means starting at the beginning, which means starting within each one of us. It means healing, becoming who you really are, and allowing that self to continuously evolve and change while you keep pulling the self together in new ways. Once this is accomplished, these are the individuals who will be able to understand, demonstrate, and nurture true healing in others, and then help pull others together to make a more expansive peace. Snake energy is the energy of wholeness, of cosmic consciousness, and the ability to experience anything willingly and without resistance. Why? Because you can transmute that. It teaches that you are a universal being full of fire to be used in the life, death, rebirth cycle. And Snake invites you to accept that fire and use it to transmute the energy of your life and stop the war. Question number 4. What advice does the plant kingdom have for us in April? And as I mentioned, this deck was a birthday gift. I actually got it from Mary Jo for my birthday. And I thought I might ask the plant kingdom for some advice for the month of April. So the card pulled here was, again, number 6, Sage, which is the card of blessing, purification, spiritual cleansing, reassembly of the emotional body, and mystical insight. Wow. Not many people think about communicating with the plant world because they were long ago cut off from a real relationship with Mother Nature and the many small intelligences that share the world with us. However, plants love humans and animals, and plants are devoted to us in every way, willing to supply us with whatever we need without ever holding back. As we change, they change their chemistry to continue supporting us by filling in the gaps in the energy body and making an effort to keep us healthy. Sage is a plant that many people are aware of, but few know much about anymore. Sage is ruled by the moon and greatly affects our electromagnetic field, our intuition, and our emotions. According to astrologers, April will be a month of intense challenges and emotional shocks. So perhaps we will need to boost intuition and smooth out our emotions as we move through the month. And Sage may have come up to remind us that it's there to help. Sage has been used by Native Americans for hundreds of years as a smudging smoke, a healing tea, an offering in many ceremonies, and even a culinary herb. It helps to clear all sorts of hurts, shocks, diseases, upsets, arguments, and sorrows. Herbs of the moon rule the gut. And this is something especially critical for the people of the West at this time, due to the poor diets, the chemical sprays, and the pharmaceutical medications we have been on for so many years. Sage is often used in salads and soups, where it does its best to restore good health and emotional balance, especially emotional balance. Like the moon card in the tarot, the sage card in the herbal astrology oracle points to the sudden awareness of an opening to the deep self, to the greater world of the subconscious, and the ancient instincts and urges that have come down to us through the generations and must be dealt with. It warns of darkness ahead, and it advises us to draw upon the inner reserves of the psyche to navigate that darkness and become sharply aware of what's causing it. Sage is a card of initiation into the silvery light of higher consciousness. And it encourages us to know that even though it's unfamiliar, that initiation and that journey is unfamiliar and perhaps uncomfortable, it's actually a great blessing. It advises that we allow ourselves to feel what we feel, even if it feels like we're disintegrating, and then to know that we will be able to reassemble ourselves as we break free of illusions and unearth hidden truths. It calls for surrender without fear to a great awakening. That's a quote. Wow. I couldn't have said it better myself. So, surrender without fear to a great awakening. This is a card that says a portal to a new world is wide open and waiting for us to cross the threshold into that world. However, to enter, one must be able to blend the old world and the new to create a new kind of everyday normality. You're going to bring some of your old with you, but not all of it. And you're going to create some new. The Sage card calls for lightheartedness, visionary insights applied to everyday situations that come up, a lucid mind, and great purpose of will. This means walking with one foot in each world as we work to make the world anew, and in doing so, we will create an entirely new timeline that we can unfold for ourselves. So, before we close, let's summarize what we've got coming toward us in April. Question number 1 was, what is the future of jobs that sustain or rebuild our economy? And what's the best way to think about future jobs as people end up losing jobs due to cutbacks, or they're graduating from college and hoping to step into a good, solid position? And the 4 of Swords was the card pulled, which has 4 main meanings: fossilized, stoned, deep sleep, and meditation. So the message here is that the idea of jobs as we have long thought of them may be a fossil in the new world we are soon to be entering. This card indicates that some kind of shock in a world turned upside down may be near. And those who have not looked ahead to see the proverbial handwriting on the wall may be unprepared. They will think the world is harsh and uncaring. However, the stained glass window represents the encouragement to put the pieces together in a new pattern that nurtures us. To do this, we must all allow some quiet time and the mental and emotional space to find our way through the challenges that confront us. This is the card of the Lord of Truce, and it tells us to stop fighting what's happening and create something new. Question number 2 was, given the political struggles going on everywhere, the threats of financial collapse across the entire Western world, as well as the constant uncertainties of the future, what is the best way to organize and move forward with our daily lives? And the card drawn here was the Five of Swords, a card symbolizing the need for personal growth and development. Personal growth and development. This is the card of learning from personal experience and walking away from dishonest, ruthless, or unjust individuals or principles or situations. In fact, it says the need to learn and grow is now primary in order to confront the situation we are facing. With the Four of Swords above, the one we just looked at, this card, the 5, 4 and the 5 together, indicate that there might be a shock of some kind coming. And although we need to give ourselves the time and the space to get clear about the next step, or even just to get clear enough to see the next steps coming at us, it warns that we may not have as much time as we would like to make changes, to let go of old views and perspectives, or to come to mature conclusions. However, we must do our best to handle the situation. The Five of Swords does not insist on doing things perfectly, but it does insist on courage and the willingness to walk away from those who would lie or mislead. Question number 3. With all the talk of a war with Iran or China, what advice can we get from the animal kingdom about avoiding war and bringing people together more peaceably? And the card drawn here was from the animal medicine deck. And to my surprise, it was number 6, the snake, the card of death, rebirth, resurrection, initiation, transmutation, and wisdom. This extraordinary creature, the snake, carries the message that all things in creation are equal, and those things that might be experienced as poison can be eaten, integrated, ingested, and transmuted if one has the proper state of mind. In other words, take it in and transmute it. Snake warns us that all wars begin inside the individual self as a result of mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional poisoning. To stop the wars, we must have the courage to transmute and transform the self, thus stopping the war against the true self. We are encouraged to heal and to become who we really are, adopting the state of mind that will allow us to live with the energy of wholeness, cosmic consciousness, and an open heart, open mind approach to life. Snake medicine invites us to accept the fire of becoming a universal being and to use that fire to transmute the self and the world. And lastly, question number 4, what advice does the plant kingdom have for us in April? And this is the first time I've pulled a card from the Herbal Astrology Oracle, which was number 6, Sage. which is the card of blessing, purification, spiritual cleansing, reassembly of the emotional body, and mystical insight. Sage is a powerful plant used for centuries to heal body, mind, and soul, and to cook with and do ceremony with. It's ruled by the moon, which rules the gut, and it opens the door to a new world if we are willing to cross the threshold into that world. Doing so will require an openness to the entire subconscious world of information and perception. That's a big world. It will require a willingness to navigate in the dark, feeling our way along without fear as we reassemble ourselves without the old illusions. It calls us to surrender to the great awakening with lightheartedness, a lucid mind, and great purpose of will. Sage is the card of initiation into the silvery light of higher consciousness. And even though the journey might not always be pleasant and comfortable, it will lead to a great blessing. So that's it for this month. All of the cards this month are telling us that April will usher in a period of difficulty. We may encounter shock, trauma, disintegration, a need to rethink, a need for transmutation, and the need for personal growth and courage to reassemble and rebirth our world. Sounds like a very interesting month, don't you think? So for those who have long wanted to be teachers and healers, this may be your time to shine. Have a good month. See you in May. Thank you for listening.